You're listening to the Comic Crusaders Podcast. I am your host, Al Mega, CEO of Comic Crusaders and Undercover Capes. In this show, I'm sitting down with creators from all walks of life to talk about inspiration, process, the lessons they've learned, and a whole lot more. What up, everybody? It's your boy, Al Mega, CEO of Comic Crusaders and Undercover Capes. Welcome to a brand new Comic Crusaders Podcast. And today, before we even start, let me introduce my co-pilot. It's another fellow Crusader, the one and only Sever the Bar. What up, kiddo?
What's up? How you guys doing?
All righty. Today, brother, we're going to talk to a legend. A legend. I mean, my man has done the Dick Tracy comics. He is the creator of Road to Perdition. I mean, and right now through NeoText, he has a fantastic new project. It's like a 1940 style whodunit, named Fancy Anders Go to War, right? With award-winning artist, an illustrator, Fay Dalton, collaborating with him. Let me bring on this amazing legend, the one and only Max Allan Collins. What's going on, sir?
Man, you got me excited. And I'm pretty bored with me. So how you getting me excited is a pretty good deal.
Yeah, let's spread the energy. Let's get it done, Max. I'm so happy to have you on. Thank you for taking some time out of your busy day to just hang out a bit and talk about, a bit about your journey and this awesome new project via NeoText you have coming out. That I actually started reading, and I'm hooked. I'm a third through. But
it's not comics, but it's heavily illustrated. It's a bit of a throwback, how the really old time adventure novels like Treasure Island and so on, they'd have a beautiful color, full page plate, and then you'd read the chapter, and then you turn the page, it'd be another of these full color plates of, just setting the tone for it. And we'd been talking about doing it that way from the beginning, but when Fay Dalton came aboard to do the cover, we were talking about who should we get. When we saw her cover, it was just like, we're done. She's got to do all the art. And she's great. She just captures that era perfectly.
Yeah, and that cover, I'll show in a little bit, it's gorgeous. Gorgeous. I mean, it's a great mix between you and her, especially with your style. I mean, it definitely fits that old school looking narrative that you're going for. So I can't wait till people pick this up and eat it up and appreciate this old school retro style, in the now. I enjoy it. But before we even get into that, Max, just
go
ahead, brother.
Max, how did you end up hooking up with Fay? How did that work out?
Well, actually, she just was one of a number of artists that they Titan lined up for Hard Case Crime Comics to do the covers of two series I did. I have a prose novel series called Quarry that's about a hitman, and we did one graphic novel about Quarry called Quarry's War. This is a year or two ago. And then we also did a Mike Hammer graphic novel. It was called The Night I Died. Well, she did covers for, they were published 4 issues per graphic novel and collected. But she did covers for both of them. And all the covers were really quite good. But her covers were there was something about them. They just talked to me. So the NeoText guys are just phenomenal about taking input from creators. I mean, some publishers just roll right over you.
Oh,
and they, we actually went through, I know for another book we went through 3 artists. Some of them were really great artists that just weren't right for that project. And frankly, I came back and said, let's see what Fay Dalton's doing. And she's doing the cover for that too. So I mean, if you find somebody that's in sync with you artistically, you don't need to look around anymore.
Yeah, that is going by the Jim Steranko psychomagnetism. What he means by that, the psycho, that is people of a like mind, like energy, if you will. It's just that synchronicity between you guys, right?
That's correct.
Which is amazing. But I want to go back. I want people to get familiar with you, sir. So, just go back a little bit about yourself. I mean, where are you from? Where did you grow up? And how did you get into this crazy business? And why even this specific, genre, that you're in with the noir and detective and all that?
Oh boy, it's hard for me to boil it down. I'm not a young guy, so there's a lot to cover. So I'll try not to fall asleep in the weeds or anything. But I grew up in Muscatine, Iowa, which is right on the Mississippi River. I can see Illinois from my house. That's where I am. And I still live here. I have never left Muscatine, Iowa, little town, 30,000 people. Been around a bit, but always come back to the Bat Cave, And I grew up in an era right when the comic books started being censored, right when the comics code came in. So I would go to like an old used bookstore where they had the old comics, which you could buy for 5 cents and 10 cents. These would be like, you could buy an EC comic book for 10 cents, a used one. Ooh. Not a bad bargain even at that time. Ooh. And so I was reading all this stuff that I was not supposed to be reading, obviously. And then still following on with the other stuff, because Superman was still being published and Batman was still being published. And some cool stuff was coming from Dell. And I just loved comics. I grew up loving comics and wanting to be a cartoonist and drawing cartoons and taking my homemade comic books to school. We didn't have photocopiers, so you just have one copy and you'd say, here, pass this around. And by the end of the day, homeroom in junior high, you'd hand it out. And at the end of the day, it'd come back to you, that kind of thing.
Oh, really? You actually got it back?
Yeah, well, it's Iowa. We're still rather dull here. So that was the beginning, but also along the way, there was even EC and Dick Tracy in particular were crime comics. And so I'm at the same time I'm reading comic books. I'm reading Sherlock Holmes. I'm reading The Saint. And then by the time I'm into junior high, there were TV shows based on a lot of the classic characters. There was a Mike Hammer show before Stacy Keach. Mike Hammer played by the Night Stalker, Darren McGavin.
Wow. And
there was a Thin Man show. There was Perry Mason, the real Perry Mason, not the HBO Perry Mason. And 77 Sunset Strip. And so I loved all that stuff. And I drifted away from the drawing and wanted to write like Mickey Spillane. I wanted to write hard-boiled private eye stories. And that was the path I went down, but I never lost my love for comics. I was telling somebody the other day, it just was so different then. This is the early 60s. And I was in a high school, we probably had 150 kids in our class. I was the one who read comics. Okay. I mean, it was not something in what really sparked it was the Batman TV show. And then it took off. People were reading comics. And because Marvel happened right around the same time, and those are such great comics. So, but for a long time, I was the guy on the bus reading the Spider-Man comic book. And
were you like,
look at Colin, look at this idiot, The idiot was that I didn't hold the comic.
Yeah, we could relate.
Yeah, many books I had in my hand, Max.
But I was a nerd long before it was fashionable, and then what really happened was when I started doing my novels in the early 70s, I had a character in one of them, in two of them actually, who was a comic book collector, and so I had kept my comics interest, and they approached me when Chester Gould, the creator of Dick Tracy, was about to retire. Somebody basically said, there's this guy in Iowa writing mystery novels who seems to know something about comics. They had no idea I'd been a Dick Tracy fanatic since I was 7 years old.
Oh, wow.
So I got a chance to try out for it, and they chose me. And for 15 years, I wrote the Dick Tracy comic strip. And during that time, it was what I was doing in the comic strip. A lot of, comics creators, that era, as is true today, they came up through a fandom. It may not have been organized, but they came up through a fandom.
Mhm.
So a lot of the people in the comics world, like Denny O'Neil, were reading what I was doing, and so in Dick Tracy. So the door opened for comic books, and
Wow.
so that's how I got to do comic books. And I did a year of Batman. It wasn't terribly well received, but I did it. And and then from that came, Ms. Tree was the indie world, and Terry Beatty and I did that for a long time, 50 issues.
Wow, great.
Before we moved to DC and did 10 more. So it's the longest running private eye comic book of all time. So just,
nice fact there.
I didn't plan any of this stuff. I think, and I don't think you can. I think careers have to be organic, growing out of what you're interested in and what you love to do. And I think particularly in comics, popular culture in general, but in comics, it's got to come out of enthusiasm and love. It's too hard. It's just too hard to do it cynically. It doesn't work. And I think people smell a phony a mile away.
Oh yeah, nowadays, yeah, heck yeah.
Does that answer? I know I went on a little long there.
That answers everything. And I know Sever had a question, because you did, since you mentioned how long you were doing Dick Tracy for.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Sever, ask that question.
Yeah, because you were doing Dick Tracy and everything, and you grew up off of Perry Mason. Now I grew up off of like Perry Mason, Matlock, Kojak.
Oh yeah.
When you're growing up with the rabbit ears for your TV and you don't got that cable box.
Yeah, Columbo.
That's what you gotta watch.
Columbo.
Yes, sir.
Rockford Files.
Oh,
Yeah.
Columbo. You were. Columbo was the funniest one. But when it came down to Perry Mason, I dreaded it, because as a kid, I thought that black and white was boring.
Yeah.
I hadn't even experienced black and white comics or anything yet. But then the Dick Tracy comic strips would be right next to the Boondocks and the Sunday Funnies and everything like that. And I know you were responsible for a run. Can you expound upon that, and, how you felt about the transfer? Because Perry Mason went from black and white to color. How you felt about the transfer from the black and white funnies to the color comics and eventually to a color film?
Well, what was interesting about writing a comic strip, a continuity comic, because in that era that I was doing that, it was not yet. It still was something kind of passé. Because if you go back to the 30s and 40s, there were a lot more story strips and adventure strips than there were humor strips. And the way it was set up, and this was still the case when I was doing it, you're doing the black and white during the week. And then on Sunday, you've got the color section. And what is interesting about it, and tricky from a storytelling standpoint, is some people only saw it in the daily strip, and other people only saw it in the Sunday strip, and then some people saw both. So you had to figure out a way to tell the story that wasn't boring to somebody who saw the whole thing, and yet repeated enough on Sunday so that people reading it Sunday to Sunday without those black and white strips in between wouldn't know what the hell was going on. And that's a trick. It's almost poetry. I always, I actually experienced Dick Tracy in the Dick Tracy comic books, because when I was a kid, they reprinted the strips in comic books, and it was not in sync with the newspaper. It was stuff that had been published years before, and some of that stuff was like incredibly violent. It's amazing to me that my mother started me on that stuff when I was 6 or 7 years old, because she had loved Dick Tracy in the paper when she was like in San Diego, and then my dad was posted there in the Navy.
Yeah. And shout out to Imperial County.
Well, it's just,
yes,
and so she loved it, and she never, I God bless her. I had exposure to Tarzan. I had exposure to all this stuff that is supposed to twist your brain, and I think it did twist my brain. I'm very happy with the way my brain is twisted, because I've only held a couple of real jobs in my life. I mean, to me, I'm a guy who's been able to do his hobby and get paid for it, which is, don't tell
More power
anybody
to
that's
that.
giving me money, please, because I do need electricity in the house to be
Yes,
able
sir.
to do this.
So crazy. So how did you feel about that Dick Tracy movie?
Yeah, I have some interesting stuff on that because when I first took the strip over in 77, late 77, it's 78 or 79, I was shown a script for a Dick Tracy movie. And the editor there asked me what I thought of it. And I said, I think it's absolutely terrible. I'm going to be frank with you. I wanted to make a big movie. This is horrible. And so years went by, and they came to me and said, well, Dick Tracy movie's going to be made. And I think they were a different editor in at that time. And I was being considered to do the movie novelization. And so I said, well, send me the script. And again, this is like maybe 12 years later. It was the same script.
Oh, damn.
And
Really?
and I thought it was terrible. And but okay, they're making it. They want me to write the book. So and I did some consulting on it, because one thing I think you will agree that they did a great job on recreating visually the look of the strip and
the aesthetics,
particularly the bad guys, particularly the grotesque villains. So I mean, that was Flat Top, that was Prune Face. They were, that was terrific, and they were having good luck when they were filming it with how that was coming across. And they actually came to me and said, who are some other villains we could put in, because they knew the famous ones. And so I knew the whole run of the strip. So I gave them half a dozen and gave them, reference material on what these characters would look like. And so I had a little tiny bit of input there.
Okay.
And then the other thing that was interesting was that I changed some things in the novelization. And the producer of the movie called me. Now listen, I did a lot of novelizations. That's the only time I heard from a producer of the movie. And he said, and he was calling me for Warren Beatty, because Warren Beatty apparently didn't talk to anybody directly. So he said, Warren wants to know why you changed this, and you changed that, and you changed that. And I explained it to him. An example would be Tess Trueheart's mother was in the script, was very negative about Dick Tracy, did not like Dick Tracy, did not want her daughter running around with Dick Tracy. And I changed that around to where she liked Dick Tracy. And they said, why did you do that? And I said, well, because the origin of Dick Tracy is that Dick Tracy found out who killed that woman's husband. So she doesn't hate him. Mm-hmm. He's a great guy who trapped. That was the beginning of Dick Tracy. This would have been like, I don't know. This would be like not getting the Batman origin correct. And so,
only one of them died that night, not both.
Yeah, only one died. And the other one was like, good. I didn't like him anyway. Mm-hmm. So when I said that, there's like a long silence, and they listened. So they started listening to me on that stuff, and so I actually impacted. This is so bizarre. I write the novelization, and it impacted the movie, which had already been shot, but they reshot that scene with Tess Trueheart's mom, and then the rest of it they did with dialogue in the back of heads, and they changed it by off-camera dialogue, and I actually have some dialogue in that movie, but. It is not a good. This gives the lie to the story idea that we all agree about. The story needs to be good, but in fact the story isn't very good. But the movie is beautiful to look at, and it does capture the feel of Dick Tracy. It seems to be sincere. I think Beatty really loved Dick Tracy. I liken it to a beautifully restored car. Vintage car but when you lift the hood, there's no motor in there.
Yo,
Yep. I get that 100.
wow.
That is deep right
Now,
there.
now you yourself are no stranger to rewriting origins. Why did you decide to do what you did with Jason Todd?
Oh yeah, man.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, how did I manage to come up with a Robin who people would phone in death
Yes.
that had him
Kill him.
Now personally, that's my favorite run. That's my favorite Robin, because I'm not really too big of a fan with the fairy boots, but you know, I got myself my Robin tattoo over here, you know what I'm saying? The Red Hood joint, you know what I mean?
Well, how old were
That
you at
Zorro
that
style.
time? How old
So
were
you
you
know,
at that time?
could you repeat that, sir?
How old were you when you're reading those?
I was about 18 or 19.
Okay, because one of the interesting things I find is particularly the younger kids, the ones who were 12 to 14, really kind of dig those comics. It's the ones who took Batman, in my opinion, too seriously that didn't like it. But it wasn't my idea to do an origin. I was assigned that. I was told to do that, and but I executed it. It was, the stealing the tire off the car and all that stuff, which made some fans mad.
Now hang on, did you get Max? Max, did you get that from the jingle, like the jingle bells, Batman smells? Did you get that from there?
No,
When the
Okay.
bill
I hadn't
lost
heard
its
that at
will?
that time. No. When did that start? Maybe it
Inspiration. What was the
picked up off
inspiration
of
then?
me. But
Oh,
I guess
really?
the
You
character's
think that
still around.
it
His
got bit
name's
off of you?
Red.
Interesting.
Is it Red? What is it? The Red Hook, or what is
Red
the
Hood.
Red Hood?
Yeah, Red Hood.
I'm told he's Jason Todd. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Yeah, I got the
I
Red Hood
think
tattoo, man.
when I leave something, I tend to stop reading it, and or if I do something on TV, I did two NYPD Blue novels, and I was watching it religiously, and then once I wrote the books, I stopped watching it. I can't explain that. But it's like, okay, I did that, and I'm done with that, But
Now, I'm
but I
not a
still
fan
love
of the
Batman.
Buzz, but that TV show was great.
Oh yeah.
And you inspired the TV show?
No, I was hired to do two novels,
Nice.
tie-in novels using the characters from the TV show. I did that for a long time with CSI. I was the licensing writer for 5 years, and I had a guy who worked with me named Matt Clemens, who's a great writer. So I've had a good opportunity to do different kinds of things, and some people will turn their nose up at novelizations of movies and so on, but I'm kind of, and I've done this to myself, I'm typed as one kind of writer, and when I was doing novelizations, I got to do science fiction, I got to do horror, I got to do war stories. I did Scorpion King. I did the Mummies. The
Oh,
Mummy
nice.
book. So to me, that in addition to letting me do some of my enthusiasms for other stuff outside what's defined as my wheelhouse, I learned how to do some things I didn't know how to do. I mean, you anything in the arts. I mean, you can study things in the arts. You can go to classes and so on. But honestly, it's basically got to be self-taught. It's trial and error. It's and it's expressing yourself and trying to get your craft up to the level that the things you want to express can be received by somebody on the other end. But if you can't really teach somebody how to write. They have to come in and they can get tips. I can help them, but they better have some, and it's not talent exactly. I think it's more drive and desire, and you got to be a little smart. You can't be an idiot, but I know a lot of C students that do A work. So it's
And got to be brave as well to put
you
yourself
have
out
to
there
be
like
brave.
that.
You know, this is way off topic, but you know, we lost Norm Macdonald.
Oh yes, I know. Yeah,
There was
man.
never anybody more brave in the popular arts than that guy.
Yeah.
He was poised to be the next Bill Murray, and the boss said, "Don't do this," and he said, "You know what? I'm going to do this because this is
Yes, he did.
what's inside of me, and I need to express it." And he didn't care.
No, he didn't.
And
Very
you see
expressive person.
the outpouring that guy got, and you know, I hope he knew, or hope he knows how people felt about him.
I'm sure he did, man. Because I think in life that a lot of people gave him his flowers. He was great. You know, he had his opportunity, and you know, and if those that didn't speak up, then you know, there you go. You missed out, guys. But I hope he's listening.
Yeah, he was fearless. He was fearless. But if you're fearless, there are a price to pay. Mediocrity, you never get in trouble for mediocrity. You know, you may make a living, but like I said, this is my don't tell anybody, but this is my hobby. This is what I want to do anyway.
I love it.
I
love it.
I tried bussing tables. I did not think that was like a career path for me.
Oh, so you weren't doing it just to get into character for the next novel?
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, I want to start talking about this next little new project from NeoText. You know, we were talking about how gorgeous the cover is. I mean,
yeah.
Look at that. Look at that.
She's fantastic.
Amazing, yo. Yeah, right? Crazy, crazy, crazy. So, you know, this is again, folks, being published via NeoText. And, you know, so is that description correct? That 40 styles, whodunnit? What's going on here? Can you give us a little insight?
I think you were right on the money. The subject matter, I've done a lot of historical stuff. I really like the private eye kind of thing. The noir that whole area is very attractive to me. I mean, like the report was
what drew you to that, Max? Was it the violence that you were talking about, or was it the pinup models? Because that was the only thing that actually got my attention growing up with like Perry Mason.
Well, you know, they always criticize the writers who do this kind of thing for sex and violence. And we'll turn right around and say, okay, sex is life, violence is death. Those are the two big topics. It's really, you know.
Yeah.
So don't tell me
getting all existential on them.
Two big topics. And a good story always has a conflict. And so a mystery, a crime story inherently has a conflict. Somebody got bumped off, there was a conflict. And so that, I think, and I didn't know that's why I was drawn to it, but in retrospect, I think that's why I was drawn to it. I also think whether it's Sherlock Holmes or Dick Tracy or Batman, that strong, heroic figure but they also somebody who breaks the rules a bit, is an outsider. I think that's very attractive. You don't see anybody really wanting the really old-fashioned. You probably don't even know this name, but there was a character years ago called Jack Armstrong, All-American Boy, and he's just the kind of guy that would make you want to throw up. I mean, it's. You don't want somebody too clean cut. Sherlock Holmes was a messed up guy. I mean,
he was a heroin fiend.
Yeah, cocaine. Yeah, he was.
Oh, it was coke. Because I remember I saw a PBS Jordan. He was shooting up.
He was shooting up, but it was coke.
Oh, geez, bro.
Yeah, it was pretty hardcore.
Did Sherlock Holmes ever go to Colombia?
Did he ever? Word. Was he ever shooting up in between his toes? Did Doyle write it like that?
Yeah, I think
was the PBS version PG.
I think I think somebody like Doyle is just a good writer who's following. See, these characters, you get an idea, and Fancy Andrews was this way for me. She kind of, once I got the basic idea, she leads the way, and a really good character on some weird subconscious level takes over, and you don't even know why you're having that character do something or say something or react. And to me, that means you're really connecting with creativity, with genuine creativity.
Do you have a favorite character that you've created?
Well, I like,
because it seems like you picked up off of a lot of runs, but do you have one that you know that's like your baby?
You mean of my own?
Yes, sir.
Well, I would say, because if it's not my own, it's my camera. But of my own, it would be either Quarry, who is a hitman. He was the first hitman that starred essentially in a book series. It wasn't just a one-off. It was that he's the hero, sort of anti-hero, and he was based on a friend of mine who I saw go. Very sweet guy who came back from Vietnam very messed up, and that was the genesis of that. And trying to put myself in his shoes, trying to imagine that, because I didn't go. I wasn't about to go. That I'm not that brave or that dumb. But the other character is a character called Nathan Heller, and Nathan Heller is the private detective in the 1930s. Starts in the 1930s, but all of these stories about him, all these novels, are real crimes that I research, like I was going to do a nonfiction book. Okay. And so he's been involved with the Lindbergh kidnapping, and he's involved with he was involved with the Roswell incident. I mean, any famous thing that has mystery surrounded with it. And I age him up through the years, so that by the time he's looking into the Kennedy assassination, he's in his 50s, and it's not just like little orphan Annie who's always 11 years old. I like to have it. I like the recurring character, but I want the recurring character a little more real. So I think that's easier to identify with. So those are my two favorite characters. But I like them all.
I'm glad to hear that. Would you want to take credit for Marvel's current life story runs? Because that sounds very similar to what a lot of heads over at Marvel are doing right now.
On comics now. My interests are, this kind of fits in with what we were talking about earlier, where I said when I've done something, I kind of walk away from it. It's like I was the biggest mystery fan you could imagine, reading mysteries. And once I started writing them, publish them, not writing them, publish them, I pretty much stopped reading them, except for the ones that I had grown up on loving. In other words, I kept taking the same vitamins I took as a kid, basically. So I do read Mickey Spillane, I do read Raymond Chandler, I do read Rex Stout. These are all the, Earl Stanley Gardner for Perry Mason. Agatha Christie is a phenomenal writer, and she's sometimes dismissed because it's like, oh, that's just, it's just the body in the library, and it's cozy and it's teacups, but actually, if you really read her, it's pretty nasty. There's people getting their heads cut off in bathtubs, and there's nice. The slasher movie basically comes from her, and then there were none, where she put 10 people on an island and somebody's killing them off one at a time, and it's somebody within that group is responsible. And she really started, and this is something she wrote.
Really?
Yeah, cool. It's something she wrote in the early 30s.
Check that out.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I gotta read that.
Genre. Well, there's a couple of good movies of it, and there's a very good. Hunt. Yeah. Well, there's I think it's called And Then There Were None. There's I think it's a BBC, but it's like a one of these British things. The British do some incredible stuff with crime and mystery.
Some PBS joints.
Yeah, very hard nosed, some of that stuff.
Okay, so I just want to get back to the new book,
Yeah.
Yeah. So
she is. I thought it would be interesting to do something in World War II in Los Angeles, where you've got all the negativity of the war with in the fantasy land of Hollywood, and also it's a time where women were being thrust into the workforce because the young men are all pumped into the military, and so the idea of putting her into a defense plant, into an aircraft plant, and the whole Rosie the Riveter thing where she's going in and has been an apparent murder in there, and she goes in undercover. And then I also play around with the fact that she's from a wealthy family, and her father is an ex-cop who became a very successful private investigator, working for all the movie studios, a lot of money there, and he married a socialite who's a very snooty woman, beautiful, but snooty and really shallow. And she wants her pretty daughter who's just gotten out of college to be a debutante and go that whole high society kind of thing. And what she wants to do is work for her father. Well, when the war comes along, he basically shuts down his agency and goes back into the service as an officer and leaves her behind. He says that you just look after the place, answer the phone, make referrals to the other agencies, do a little sweeping, do a little dusting. And of course, instead, she goes full bore with the agency. And in all of these stories I've done about her, I've done 3 that there's 2 more waiting in line here that we'll see over the next year and a half. She goes undercover. And so it's what I think is very interesting in the first one. We have this young woman who comes from money, and now she's got to interact with, the black chick, the Hispanic girl, the old gal who came from Oklahoma, the Native American, and all these people that are really outside her, anything she's experienced. I mean, she went to some fancy girls' school in the East. So how's she going to relate? How are they going to relate to her? Are they going to see through the fact that she isn't who she says she is? Meanwhile, there's a killer on the loose, which there usually is in these stories, right? And the format is a lot of fun because in addition to Fay doing these incredible paintings, and they're paintings that come, there's 10 of them, there's 10 chapters. So you got the cover and 10 paintings. It's 30,000 words. Now, most mystery novels are going to be a minimum of 60,000, maybe 50. So 30 that's down and dirty. And I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed the pace of it, that it clips. I don't know if you're reading it now. It clips along, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does really well. And, the whole introduction of the cast and all, and it has its humor in it as well. From that era as well. You capture that essence of it.
Well, thank you. One thing that really annoys me with historical stuff is when the dialogue is full of things that were not expressions at the time.
Yes.
And that was one of my big problems with the HBO Perry Mason. The thing looks absolutely authentic, and everything they say was like expressions from today.
Yes.
I'm like, no, some of this stuff, that expression wasn't around a year ago.
Yeah. My wife does that when we watch a movie that's maybe based in the 90s era, so that's our slang era,
yes,
if you will. And she says, and then she sees somebody using a slang from now. It's like, we weren't using that yet, blah, blah, blah. She catches these things they're getting it all wrong. Who are they talking to?
Well, and you know why? I mean, she's right, because it pulls you out of it. And some people don't notice it, okay? They don't, and that's fine, but you don't want to pull them out of the story. You want to keep them, keep them inside that story.
Yeah, because we get stuck on it. Like, wait a minute. If we start having a whole discussion and the movie's going on.
My wife is that way too, and she's, so, and that's why I have her proof all my stuff, so she can say, no,
No, Max.
It's always
Naughty,
good to have, I think you got to have some smart eyes look at your stuff before it goes in. Somebody you trust.
Now, was it her
Makes sense.
decision for you guys to stay up in Iowa, or why did you guys decide to stay there?
I stayed in Iowa basically because this was I graduated in 1966. You don't want to do the math. It's depressing. But I have a rock and roll band going, and I did not want to leave my rock and roll band. So instead of going out to college someplace, I stayed and went to community college so I could keep my band together. And then I went on to the University of Iowa, which is just about 40 miles from my house. So I commuted and kept my band together. And, that's...
So what happened to the band?
I still play.
Really? What do you play?
I play keyboards and I sing. And,
Check you out.
Okay,
Have you
so
been
now I have
recorded
that.
anywhere? Are we gonna get Max Collins Sings the Blues album soon or something? What's going on?
No, there are a couple of things out there, but there's a somewhat infamous. There's a record called, you can look this up on YouTube. It's called Psychedelic Siren.
Okay.
We recorded it. It was on Dial Records, which was a subsidiary of Atlantic, which is big time. Okay, and we recorded it.
Terror Squad was over there.
We recorded it in Nashville, and it was in the same studio that all kinds of people like, Bob Dylan and all kinds of people.
Gotcha. Legends
had been there. We weren't legends, but we recorded there, and it was our only release. We had a 5-year contract, and they never asked us to do another record.
Yo,
but they
just let y'all ride that out.
but we were a regional hit, and we got into the Iowa Rock and Roll Hall of Fame about 10 years ago, and
word.
And the original band playing that song is posted on YouTube, but also about half a dozen bands around America and around the world have covered us, because it's one of those garage band songs that got picked up on a lot of the compilation CDs that were done. Things like we weren't on Nuggets, but those Nuggets, if you've ever seen those, I think we're on one called Psychedelic Unknowns, but it's among collectors. It's a it's a known entity. And,
all right, I gotta know this then. So if you guys cut an album, have you ever been to a convention or an outing where somebody has brought you the records? Like, I remember this, but when you were there for books.
Yeah, all the time.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. And I kept the one band stayed together for 10 years, and more like 6 years. And there were about 3 years we weren't playing, and a pal of mine and I, who were kind of the closest thing to the Paul and John of the band, what we were saying, like, I like to play again, but I don't like the music. Disco was going on, and it's like, I don't like this. And I said, I know. Let's take the old list and call it nostalgia. So we went out and we called the band Cruisin', and we did it. And we were one of the first 60s bands in the country, because the 60s had only been about 4 years ago, right? Calling ourselves a 60s band. And various versions. We've had a lot. I mean, people have passed away. I mean, it's been a long haul, but we still play. We played 3 gigs this summer.
So what was that like, riding through like your city and your state, and girls showing you their ankle while you're
we played
playing on the radio?
Mostly Iowa, Illinois, but the exciting thing was, and these names may or may not mean anything to you, but we opened for some big acts at the time. The Rascals,
the Rascals.
The Buckinghams. We actually opened for Iggy Pop once.
Ooh,
and we opened for the Romantics, and I mean, we opened for a lot of folks. Flo and Eddie, who were the Turtles. I actually went to an oldies show about a month ago, and about 3 of the acts there were acts that we had opened for years ago.
Oh, wow.
So I love, it's all creativity. It's all sort of all storytelling in a way. If you get
Yes,
down.
sir.
All right. I don't want to keep it too much longer, but now, since you were in music and you're a fantastic writer,
Well,
what type of music do you tune into, if at all, when you're trying to get into your creative space?
Well, I don't listen to music I used to. When I was a kid, I'd listen to music, but now I for a long time found that I'll just stop and listen. So I should be working. I just be listening. But when I will, what I will do is I'll put stuff on when I'm doing sort of the editing kind of stuff, like entering things. I've made corrections. Now I'm going to enter stuff. I can have music on. I do listen to a lot of music. I feel kind of bad that I'm out of step now, but I do. But the newest thing I listen to is Weezer, which is
that's great.
I love Weezer.
Weezer's. My son introduced me to him basically. In fact, this is I'll tell you. There's a tiny story. Is that my son, when he was just getting out of high school, was going to do this long road trip to go see Weezer with all his friends, and I just had bad images of, oh my God, these 5 guys are going to be dead in a ditch, and the flames are going to be high. And so I said, I want to go to that. I want to see that too. It was Weezer, and so I talked him to let me drive him there, and I'm just like, oh God, what am I in for? And so they're down in the mosh pit area. They're down in the crazy world, and then I go up and just me and an old man, and go up to the I go up to the balcony, and I'm sitting there, and the first thing though, which was really great, was that Tenacious D was opening, which is Jack Cable.
Cool.
And I knew that, and that was one of the reasons I went there, and so I was up for that. And then Weezer comes on, and I'm just sitting there, and I hear about 2 bars, and I'm leaning forward. And I'm like, holy cow! And this is rock and roll. This is the real deal. And so at the break, I'm downstairs where they got the merch, and I run into my son, and we're both buying merch for the same band.
Nice.
So now we both have kind of the same band. I should mention his name. His name is Nathan Collins.
Shout out Nathan.
He is a translator. He's obviously much more smart than I am. He's a translator of Japanese to English.
Oh, no.
And
Nice.
he is the translator on a really great manga called JoJo's Bizarre Adventures.
Oh, he works on that?
That joint is
Say
crazy.
word, yes.
So he's doing that for
familiar.
Shonen Jump?
He's the translator.
For Shonen
Crazy.
Jump?
JoJo's
Yeah,
Bizarre
for the manga?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yo, that's crazy.
He's done about 8 of them, I think. There was somebody for a while, and then he's done all the more recent stuff. And he also was the translator of the novel, ready? Battle Royale.
No.
Yeah, he translated that. And so
Whoa.
he's a major talent.
We got to have him on one day and talk some
Absolutely.
manga and stuff.
Facts.
Oh,
Yeah.
because and he's done all kinds of stuff. He's also done video games, and he lived over there for a year. And so, in fact, this can be our parting shot if you want it to be. But Road to Perdition was influenced by Lone Wolf and Cub, obviously. So we were together at San Diego Con, and the creator of Lone Wolf and Cub, I don't want to butcher his name, but he was doing a panel, and they had a translator there to do the panel with him, and Nate and I are sitting in the audience, and so they have the questions at the end, how they'll line up at the microphone, and so somebody asks him, what do you think about, Road to Perdition? And he named a couple other things that had drawn upon Lone Wolf and Cub. And through the translator, he said, I just wish that they would take the time to thank me and, for what I did. And so afterwards, we go up front, and Nate's standing with me, looking about as all-American as you can look like, and says right to him in Japanese, "This is my father. He wrote Road to Perdition. He wants to tell you thank you, and he's a big fan." And he was, and
he was fluent. Like, what in the hell? On the spot, son.
Well, what is this white kid doing, shouting Japanese at me?
Oh man.
So that was my encounter.
That's crazy.
I know you were proud.
It's a lot of fun talking to you guys.
I want to mention one thing before you left.
Great, Max.
Yeah, before you leave, I do want to mention this thing because you mentioned that Mickey Spillane was one of your heroes.
Absolutely.
Didn't you get some kind of meet him and work with him?
Oh, we were very good friends. He was my hero growing up. I'm so happy that you know who Mickey Spillane is, because sometimes I have to explain who Mickey Spillane is to people, even though he was the best-selling mystery writer of the 20th century.
Yes.
Okay, but that was 20 years ago now. So what the hell? But I wrote him fan letter after fan letter as a kid, and never heard back. And then when I sold my first 2 books, I sent them to him, and I got a really warm letter back.
Ooh.
But he was somebody who was really controversial, and as a fan, I did a lot of articles, essays defending him. I wrote seriously about him, and there were people that knew even before I was writing my novels who knew that that Max Collins guy, he's the Mickey Spillane guy. He's the guy who defends Mickey Spillane. Who really
That's Mickey's boy.
That's Mickey's boy. And so the BoucherCon, which is the big mystery fan convention like San Diego Con, nothing's like San Diego Con, but in 1981, they contacted me and said, he's going to be a special guest here. Spillane's going to be a special guest here. It was in Milwaukee, in Miller Lite. He was doing those commercials for them, you'll remember. We're bringing him in and sponsoring him, and he was going to be one of the guests of honor. And they asked me, he'd never done a convention before. He said, would you be the liaison? And I'm like, oh, God, sure. And so you guys, I think, will understand this because you're fans. I didn't sleep the night before. I was frightened. I was frightened that he'd be a jerk.
Yeah.
Because when you idolize somebody and you meet them and they're a jerk, your world comes crashing down.
Never meet your hero starts being heard everywhere.
Yeah, I've been lucky, but I sure was lucky with Mickey because they took me up to his room and he answered the door and they said, from the convention, Max, this is Mickey. Mickey, this is Max Collins. And he says, oh, I know Max. We've been corresponding for years. And I said, that's right, Mickey. 100 letters from me, 1 letter from you.
Wow,
that's a fair ratio.
Burst into laughter, and we were immediately good friends.
Oh, nice.
And then I started visiting him in his home a couple times a year. We did a bunch of projects together, and I mentioned my son Nathan. He's Nathan's godfather. And then when he died of pancreatic cancer, and that was in 2006. That's you don't want that phone call. He called me and told me what was happening, and he said, I'm working on he hadn't done my camera in a long time. He said, I'm working on one. I don't think I'm going to get it finished. If I don't, would you finish it? And I said, absolutely. Absolutely. So I don't want to. I don't want to have to, but I'm there if you need me. And then he apparently right away went to his wife and said, when I'm gone, there's going to be a treasure hunt around here. He had 3 offices in this place.
Oh shit.
Take everything you can find and give it to Max. He'll know what to do. Well, turned out he had started, a dozen books that he hadn't finished. And so I ended up being essentially the literary executor. And I've done, I don't know how many books. If I've doubled the number of Mike Hammer books, all of which are finishing books he started.
Crazy.
Where he maybe wrote 100 pages and then I turned it into 300. So I'm very close to him. I'm the project I'm working on right now. All this, you can't see all this crap on my desk, but the stuff this room looks neat. It is not. It's from here down.
It's an illusion.
Absolutely an illusion. And I'm doing a biography of his life with another fan, Jim Traylor, and it's going to be done by Mysterious Press. Next year is the 75th anniversary of Mike Hammer.
Wow.
Mike Hammer's first book, I, the Jury, came out in 1947 and changed everything about the way we perceive heroes. He was the first really badass hero. There's no James Bond. There's no Frank Miller Batman. Frank Miller is a stone Mickey Spillane freak.
Yeah, but it's Mike Hammer. It says it in the name. The name itself just like,
the name.
Right? Mike Hammer.
Got any questions?
And you got to say it with the New York, Mike Hammer,
Yeah, that's it. Awesome. It's funny because he claimed he hated New York, but he was absolutely a poet of New York. Nobody wrote about New York and the rain better than Mickey Spillane.
Yeah.
You're there, man. Yeah.
When you hate something, you can write about it as passionately as when you love something. That's what it is.
He said that rain was the sweat of the city.
Oh, yeah, and definitely smelled like it, too. I grew up in New York.
Yeah.
I grew up in Greenpoint by what we call the shit factory. That's where they used to process sewage.
Well,
who knows? Luckily, none of us became mutants growing up.
He was a lifeguard at Breezy Point.
Okay.
You know that?
Yes.
Flatbush Avenue.
Yeah, wow.
So he was born in Brooklyn, but he was raised a lot of his early years were in New Jersey.
Okay. Which I like to call New York's dumpster, and I said that just kiddingly one day. Wow, people got so mad. Like, I'm just playing.
People hate the truth, don't you?
Right. Y'all fronting on where Redman was born. That's cold. I'm curious though. Is this your first memoir that you're writing?
I've done some other nonfiction. I did with a guy named Brad Schwartz. We did 2 books on the real story of Eliot Ness. Oh. The first book is about the Capone stuff, and then the second is when Ness was the safety editor of Cleveland. I'm sorry, the phone rang.
No worries.
I just got rid of it. So sorry. But yeah, I've done that. I did a book called History of Mystery, which is a book about the history of mystery. It says it in the title, like Mike Hammer says what Mike Hammer is. So I've done a smattering of nonfiction. I'm a very big believer in, if you're going to be a freelancer, the more trouble you're going to have is the more narrow your focus is. If you can learn to operate in different areas, you have a better chance of making a living. Because I don't remember the exact number, but there was something startling I read in Writer's Digest years ago that there was something like in the entire nation, 5,000 full-time writers. Everybody else was part-time, was a teacher, was a reporter, but full-time fiction writers, very small group, because it's hard to do. And I don't mean, I'm not talking about the physical aspect of, but it's hard to survive because, one market will close up. And that's when people say to me, well, how do you decide whether, like with Road to Perdition, why did you do that as a graphic novel? And, instead of a novel, or how about a movie? Well, you go through the door that's open.
Yeah, agreed.
And so somebody wanted a noir graphic novel, and I said, well, okay, here's one. And then we did Road to Perdition. It wasn't me sitting around waiting for the perfect vehicle to roll up in front of my house and beautiful woman open the door and say, "Step on in." No, it doesn't work that way. You got to find a door, and if there's no door, you find a window.
Yeah. If not, get a battering ram and do what you got to do.
Yeah.
God.
I
or you just put on the Gore-Tex.
I used one of those once to break into. I won't say what the circumstances were, but somebody was in there that was a relative, and the cop said, "You can't, we can't do this, but you can." And he handed me the battering ram. You know that stuff you see on TV where they hit it and it opens?
Is it real?
It took me about 8 swings to get that door to open. I mean, that is hard to do.
How would you feel like one of the characters you wrote of? Oh, and here I am, trying to get Max Allan.
I felt like a complete
You should have done it in one try. Come on, bro.
Well, in a book, you want the door to open fast. In a movie, you want it to open fast. But in real life,
you're struggling. Help me, officer. Kick it in. Help me. Kick it from the back.
He was amused. You know he was amused.
Of course he was.
Like this dumbass civilian trying to open a door with a battering ram.
That must have been a
sight. Hey, don't feel bad, Max. I tried to do the Office Space with a guitar once upon a time. That took forever.
No worries.
Yeah. Life is hard. Don't try this at home.
Excellent. And, Adam, you came on too late because we're about to close up the show because, Max is writing the next great one. But, Blind Adam just says greetings. He's part of our network.
If he has a question, we'll take it before we go.
Yeah, if you have a question, Adam, throw it in there. But he is blind. That's not just a text name. So he has to do the text-to-speech thing real quickly.
Word.
Yeah, so let's see if he's able to pull something in there. But I want to let folks know while we see if Adam has a question that this book, Fancy and the Ghost to War, is going to be published October 5th, right, of this year.
Yeah,
and
it's available on Kindle, but also
now?
No, on the 5th it'll be available on Kindle, but it is a physical book as well.
Yes, I'm a physical man.
Remember those? That you hold
I'm a physical man. I'm a physical man. I love those. I don't understand.
Media. Yes. Physical media rules.
Like digital is fun if you don't want to ruin an old comic that may be worth something. There I understand that. Well, if you want to, I'm not going to let you look at that. You can look at it here. This is what it looks like inside. You know what I mean? But otherwise, no, I'm a print man.
Well,
it's all about putting history on it.
I don't understand the world because we now have the ability to have gigantic flat screen TVs with 4K in our house, and everybody wants to watch movies on their phone.
Isn't that nuts?
I do not get it.
Isn't that nuts? You have to format stuff for your phone nowadays.
Gentlemen, you guys are a blast to talk to.
No, you've been awesome.
You are, Max. Come on now.
Yeah, you're the man of the hour. So, folks, again, before Max leaves, I want you to please visit his website right there, maxallancollins.com. Check him out. You can see everything he's got going on. And please go to, follow NeoText on all the socials. Be on the lookout for the book Fancy and the Ghost to War, available October 5th. And with that, I am Al Mega with Sever the Bard and the legendary Max Allan Collins. Thank you, brother. Folks, you know what to do. Yes, sir.
Thank you so much.
No, my pleasure. My pleasure. You rock, brother.
Mr. Bard, pleasure meeting you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The pleasure is mine. Salutations.
Dig the mask. I really dig the mask.
And on the next Comic Crusaders podcast, Max will have a mask of his own. Let's see. No, it's not. All right, everybody. Later. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Comic Crusaders podcast. If you like the content, please subscribe and turn on notifications. Also, please visit comiccrusaders.shop and our extended podcast family over at undercovercapes.com. And also, make sure to download the Comic Crusaders app on the Google Play Store today.